Is that all right? Okay. All right. So I was just thanking you for the time this morning. And what we did was like kind of a 30,000-foot view. It was almost like flying in an airplane and looking down out of the windows of the airplane over the land, over the ministry, and seeing what are the big concepts that we need to be able to understand with refuge, transformation, and partnership, and how has that impacted the way that our staff functions, the way that we are challenged to grow. And now we are going to bring it down to about 10,000 feet. And then in a little while, we're going to bring it down even further to about 5,000 feet, down to ground level, closer to the ground. But right now, we're going to stay at 10,000 because we're going to talk a little bit about what refuge means specifically for leaders and pastors in a church. And this is incredibly important because as we talked about at the very beginning when we opened up that first session, we can't share with others what we ourselves have not experienced. And so I want to start, in your binder, you'll have a piece of paper. Papa Obed, may I look at this for a moment? You will see several things. What we are looking for is the one that has RTP theology at the top. And also the one that says the soul needs a keeper. So you should have both of those. And that's what we're going to be using for about the next hour or so. Yeah. You what? Did you say? They're not colored. There's just two within your folder. Yep. Oh, we have two extra. Yep. Did anyone else not get a folder? Okay. Oh, the refuge book. Yep. Perfect. There we go. So this idea of pastors and leaders in the church need to experience refuge for themselves. We need to be able to see ourselves as God sees us, desiring us to be whole and complete as well. And I ran across this book a handful of years ago and was incredibly challenged by it. It's called Soul Keeping by John Ortberg. Has anyone read it before? Yeah, it's very good. This whole book called Soul Keeping is about this idea of us protecting all of who we are. He references the soul is not just part of us, that we don't have a soul, we are a soul. So when we think about this idea of a soul, we have to, have to think about this idea of the whole of who we are. So our soul is this sandwich, and our soul needs a keeper. And so this part of the book was so powerful that I printed it off for us to read together. And so we're going to do that to launch into this section, and I would love to hear at the end, what do you see and what do you notice, what stands out to you? But it's from page 88 in the book, and I'm just going to read it to us. We're just going to sit and process it for a few minutes together. I think my microphone is on. Is that better? Can you hear me? I think Pastor. So I'm just going to read it to us. The soul needs a keeper. I and no one else am responsible for the condition of my soul. I and no one else am responsible for the condition of my soul. This is the author talking. In my early 50s, I was given a sabbatical, 7 weeks with nothing to do. The elders at our church invited me to take it. Actually, they insisted that I take it. I needed it because I was becoming increasingly frustrated and impatient and preoccupied. I felt as if I had too much to do and not enough time or ability to do it. I was obsessed with the external things that needed to be done around me. I was operating on the unspoken assumption that my inner world would be filled with life, peace, and joy once my external world great recipe for a healthy soul as long as you live in a perfect world. During my sabbatical, it was easy to ruthlessly eliminate hurry, as my friend and mentor Dallas Willard had so wisely counseled. I found myself thinking that I'm a better person when I'm on sabbatical than I am when I'm working for God at the church. And I knew that was just wrong. I began to form a new goal. I want to be as relaxed as I am on vacation while being as productive as I am at work. There was only one place to learn about that. He talks about throughout his book his friendship with his mentor, Dallas Willard. And so he drove back to where Dallas lives, to Box Canyon, and I spent a whole day with Dallas. I told him that I felt frustrated because the people at the church I served were not changing more. I asked him what I needed to do to help our church experience greater levels of spiritual growth. Long pause. You must arrange your days so that you are experiencing deep contentment, joy, and confidence in your everyday life with God. Huh? No, I corrected him. I wasn't asking about me. I'm asking about other people. I was wondering what I need to do. I'm wondering what I need to make the church do. I was thinking about a book everyone should read, or a program everyone should go through, or a prayer system everyone should commit to. Yes, Brother John, he said with great patience and care. I know those things, but that's not what they need most. The main thing you will give your congregation, just like the main thing you will give to God, is the person you become. If your soul is unhealthy, you can't help anybody. You don't send a doctor with pneumonia to care for patients with immune disorders. You, and nobody else, are responsible for the well-being of your body. I'm trying, I said. I learned long ago about the importance of having quiet time when I read the Bible and do daily devotions. I do my best to start each day that way. I didn't say anything about having quiet time. People in churches, including pastors, can crush with guilt over their failure at having a regular quiet time or daily devotions. And then, even when they do, they find that it does not actually lead to a healthy soul. Your problem is not the first 15 minutes of the day. It's the next 23 hours and 45 minutes. You must arrange your days so that you are experiencing total contentment, joy, and confidence in your everyday life with God. But how can I have total contentment, joy, and confidence? I responded. My work isn't going nearly well enough. Lots of people are not happy with me. I'm inadequate as a pastor, a husband, a father. Every week I carry the burden of delivering a sermon and knowing I'll have to feel the pain if it doesn't go well. I didn't say you should experience total contentment, joy, and confidence in the remarkable adequacy of your own competence or the amazingly successful circumstances of your life. It's total contentment, joy, and confidence in your everyday experience of God. This alone is what makes a soul healthy. It's not your wife's job. It's not your elder's job. It's not your children's job. It's not your friend's job. It's your job. The stream is your soul, and you are the keeper. When we talk about refuge, when we talk about what it means for us as leaders and pastors in the church, God is asking us and calling us into deeper levels of intimacy with Him first and foremost. Our identity is not founded on how well we succeed, how many people come through our doors, how many people attend our small groups or our prayer times. Our identity is found in a God who has been in control of this a whole lot longer than we've ever even been alive, as Jim was saying earlier. It is our job as leaders and pastors to care for our soul, to find refuge in Him and Him alone. So what do you see? What stands out to you? What sentence made you go, oh, as you read? Yes, Christine.
If your soul is connected
Why do you love it?
Because you can give only what you have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If you are good, you will give. Good. I don't know if I have to say goodness.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are not, you can offer only the things you have. If you don't have anything good, you cannot give something good to somebody. Yeah.
Good. Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
Saying that I want to be relaxed as I am on vacation while being as productive as I'm at work.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that personally I have struggled with.
Mm-hmm.
Every time I do praise and worship, every time I'm not feeling on Sunday, wherever I am, I'm thinking what's going on.
Mm-hmm. So you feel that responsibility.
It is a responsibility. So
Yeah. Challenged by that.
I love the idea of, as hard as I spend energy to lead worship and all that, on vacation I should spend the same energy to just relax. I should just go for it really well, with all my strength. It's good. It gives me permission.
Yeah. I love that. Permission. Thank you. Anyone else?
The responsibility, the title itself, by the first sentence right here, not the title, but the first sentence said, I and no one else am responsible for the condition of my soul.
Yeah.
And then we come back here, say the Spirit is your soul, and you are the keeper. It's like sometimes we just want to put it down. They have to behave this way. They have to do this for me to feel good and for my soul to be healthy. But it's turning it around and saying, no, it's not everybody that's that. You're always responsible to watch over your soul.
Yes.
So it takes the stress away.
Yes.
Whatever people are doing.
Yeah.
And like especially being in leadership, we constantly judge the result by what we see people doing, instead of saying what is happening here. And the greatest temptation, especially for us preachers, when you get the Bible, the greatest temptation for me has been, wow, this will be a good message. And the Holy Spirit will always remind me that if it's not changing you, then it's not going to be a good message. So it's a constant reminder that read the Bible for you, not to prepare the sermon for others.
Right.
And preach only what has transformed you. Now, when you're preaching it passionate, because it's like you cook the food and you taste it. You're like, this is good because I tested it myself. So I think that has been a bigger battle for me all over the years as a preacher, and I always pray that the Lord help me to continue to do good. And I think this is addressing that I'm the keeper of my soul.
You said something so interesting, Pastor Patrick. That idea that no one else is going to do that for me. And my personality, the way that God has created me, and it's both good and bad, is I oftentimes find myself wanting other people to say things for me, or to call things out for me, or to say, oh, you are good, or you do need to take a rest, or whatever that is, but no one can do that for us. I had this beautiful picture once of this garden. So God has created this beautiful garden. So think about some of the most beautiful places you've seen. And in this garden there are flowers, and there are bushes, and there are trees, and there God is on his knees, and he's tending the garden. And this idea that the garden is his church, his children, and there he is in love and care, pruning a little branch or taking off a thorn and working the ground. And our desire as leaders in the church, as pastors in the church, we have this heartfelt desire to get right down in the dirt next to him and say, God, I want to help. Because these are your children and they're beautiful, and we want to pick up the shears and we want to begin to trim and to help him in his work. But when we don't take care of ourselves, It's like seeing all the work that God has done and going right across the flower bed. Because we are also part of that garden. The work that God is sowing and developing in us, we are valuable. We are valuable to Him. I once did an activity in class where, I just shared this recently. I don't know if I was with you. I just shared this, oh no, it was with a young adult. I used to teach in the classroom, and at the beginning of each year with my English students, they would walk in, they would sit down, and I would say, okay, I want you to give me 100 story titles from your life. And they would look at me kind of strangely, like, what? I said, your life, give me 100 story titles. You're 16 years old, so first birthday, second birthday, third birthday, fourth birthday, there's 16 right there. Your first boyfriend, your broken ankle, whatever it may be. And there they would sit through the first hour, and the first 20 or 25 was painful to watch. I'm watching them. But by the time they got to 60 or 70, they're rolling. And at 100, they could have kept going. And I would take those papers, and I would laminate them. And I would give them back to the students. And every once in a while, at the beginning of class, I would say, okay, pull out your sheet and tell me number 18. Tell me number 26. And the point being is because I needed them to know that their story was valuable, their story was worth being told, and they actually have a story. You, without your title, without whatever it is that you are doing here at Change the Nations, are valuable. Your story is worth hearing, and God cares for it preciously and deeply, and it's worth protecting. And when we run ourselves ragged, when our meaning and worth is defined by what we do on a Sunday morning, we are missing the real story underneath of a child or son of daughter of the King who's been redeemed and saved. That's our story. We are a part of that, and it's precious, and it's worth taking care of. You are precious, and you are worth taking care of. We cannot ask of people what we've never come to understand for ourselves. And I think at its core, the reason why some of us really struggle is because of how we see God. A.W. Tozer, at the very beginning of his book, The Knowledge of the Holy, says the most important, what comes into our minds when we think about God is the most important thing about us. What do we think of when we think of God? Do we see someone with a hammer ready to slam us if we mess up? Do we see a God who is aloof with his arms crossed, staring at the world going, well, that's a bummer. I'll try again later. Do we see him as mean, vindictive, judgmental, angry at us? Or do we see him as that Father who's down in the dirt, loving us and caring for us? Our Papa. Our Papa. What do you think of when you think about God? And that's not something that I can answer for you. That's not something that anyone else in here can answer for you. What you think about him, his character, his identity, frames everything that you do from this point forward. If you believe God to be angry, you are going to act in such a way as to appease that anger. If you believe God to be judgmental, you will find yourself judgmental. We take on and begin to act out those things that we think of when we think of God. And so when we say that one of the most core things about refuge theology is that we ourselves have to have experienced it, that comes absolutely first. Because if we've not experienced a God who is loving and safe, then we cannot be that safety for others because we're acting out of the way we see him. So we have to own that and grapple with it and begin to correct and reframe the way that we see him and operate from that place. And so you'll see there on that piece of paper that I gave you plenty of space to write notes, to jot things. Oh, it's this one here. To jot things down. As things come up, as I'm talking, write them down. Because I'm going to give us time at the end to journal and to pray. So use this. So I have one other picture before I move on to the next one. Again, I'm speaking a little bit from experience because I have often found in working with teenagers that using pictures and illustrations is really helpful. But I've also found the more that I've worked with adults really need that too. We need pictures and we need images and we need ideas. So I shared this in a sermon just recently, this idea of God and how God sees us and views us. And I took it all the way back to, we talked about the Garden of Eden and what happened in the garden in Genesis 1, 2, and 3. That here were Adam and Eve who were created for connection and community with God. God saw them, he loved them. The word tells us that he walked with them in the cool of the evening. And then Satan came in. He began to whisper to them, did God really say that you can't eat from that tree? And he began to plant seeds of doubt of who God was and his character. And so out of temptation, they ate of the fruit. And the word tells us a couple of things. We see an introduction of shame that we talked about, the introduction of sin, and the introduction of our temptation to hide from him, to pull away from him. And this is the picture that I shared. Imagine being in relationship with someone. So I know you have not met my husband, but maybe you can just pretend that he's here. Imagine this tall, dark, and handsome guy who's very smart and kind of goofy. And then you got it. That's him. So I'm in a relationship with Jeff, and we've been married for 14 years. We've served on the mission field together. We've walked through tough seasons together. And let's say the two of us in relationship and friendship, I decide, you know what? I know that I was supposed to meet him later, but you know what? I would rather go shopping. But I feel bad about telling him that's what I'd rather do, so I'm just going to lie about it. I'm going to just tell him that I'm visiting a friend in the hospital, because that feels more holy. So Jeff, I'm going to go visit Sue in the hospital. And he says, okay, yeah, no problem. But then after a day or two, I began to feel guilty that really I went shopping. And I began to think, gosh, I don't know. I feel really bad for lying. Maybe he knows that I'm lying. Maybe he's judging me. Maybe if I just give him a little bit of space and he stays right here and I'll just move over here. And oh man, I feel so bad about lying. I think I need to go shopping again. I need to clear my mind. I'm gonna just go shopping again. But then he's really gonna know, and then he's gonna know that I was shopping the first time if I say I'm shopping the second time. So I'm just gonna tell him I'm visiting the homeless at a shelter up the road. And before I know it, in my lie and in my sin, I have pulled away from him. He hasn't moved. He's still standing right here. And I'm over there. But in my own sin and my own fear and my own shame, I've began to write this story about what he thinks of me that's not actually true. And here's the incredible thing about our God, is God doesn't just say, oh man, you really did mess up. I'm going to move over here. No, he never moved. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. He's the God that we serve and love. He is faithful and true. But he looks at us and he knows what's going on inside of us. And he says, I'll come to you. Let me come down to you. And let me lift you up. And let's walk this thing out together. And the question is do we believe that he's come to where we are? in the midst of our imperfection, the midst of our grasping for control and identity, that he's met us there and wants to walk us towards healing? Because if we don't believe that, there is no way that we can help somebody else walk towards healing and wholeness, because we don't actually believe him to be who he says he is. That is our God. So when we say we have to experience it for ourselves, we have to experience it for ourselves, and we have to put ourselves in a place to receive it. We don't try to grapple our way back to him. We receive the love that he has for us and let him put us back together. And once we've experienced that, then we can help others. So people of refuge, leaders of refuge, pastors of refuge are people who have experienced God's love, his safety, and who want to walk with others to experience that. Everything else from that point, without that, there's no point. It's just another program, another attempt at our ability to control life. It has to start from that place. And so when we see that on there, we have to experience it from someone who first showed it to us. That's what we're talking about. And then we can help others experience that, be impacted by it. And it changes the way we view other people. So we've been challenged at Crossroads as a staff to be incredibly careful and intentional with how we view people when they walk through our doors on a Sunday morning. To not judge the way that they are dressed, whether they smoke or don't smoke, what neighborhood they come from, whatever their past may be, but to accept them and let them walk into our doors to experience what we ourselves have experienced. It frames everything that we do. To provide a counseling center where people can come and find wholeness and healing. To provide classes where people can learn more about this God who loves them deeply. It's the framework, the lens through which we operate as a church. So it doesn't matter where they come from. It means that they are accepted and loved as the image of God. The imago Dei. Genesis 1:27. So Jim in his book, don't you love, first you watch yourself on a TV and then you get to see yourself quoted? Yes, you really said that. So Jim in his book says a couple of things. One of them was too long for me to write down. But as you read the book, you'll come across some of these things. The first one was this. Jesus was calling us out from under oppressive thinking and actions that demoralize and dehumanize people. We are made for so much more than we often settle for. He wants a church that is set free and healed from sin so that it's ready to partner with him. Refuge is a reflection of our convictions. Without it, we are only people with a lot of information and very hard edges. Because without having experienced it, it's just all up here. So, we are called at Crossroads as a staff, and as people get to know us and say, yes, I want to call this home, we begin to call and refer to ourselves as people of refuge. As a reminder of the foundation that we start from. And so you'll see on the paper, on the back side, that again, that comes out of 1 Samuel 22, 1 and 2. And that we are challenged to be people of refuge who are authentic. So given what we just talked about, what we just processed together, what do you think that I am saying when I say we are to be authentic? So what do you think I'm saying when I say we are to be authentic? Any ideas?
We're not leaving false impressions with God
Yeah.
or ourselves. We are honest to ourselves and to others. And accept others in the same way.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
We are reliable.
Ooh, what do you mean by reliable?
trust us and come to us easily.
I like that because what you just painted, Lucy, is not an image of you running to everybody else. It's you making yourself accessible. I think sometimes we get that confused. We find ourselves running everywhere to meet all of these needs. But in saying and being reliable and authentic, people feel safe to approach you. There's that balance. That's really good. Yes, Joseph.
I was thinking to go as we are, so no fake.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Thinking the same thing, like being real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The true you.
Yeah.
Not hiding anything.
Yes, the real you. I like that. Oop, no, I'm sorry, Pastor Obed. Yes. Yeah.
I was thinking that like being not forcing things. So
Hmm.
not
Hmm. Hmm.
feeling like we are pressured or
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I had another person on staff once say to me, she pays a very close attention to how she walks on a Sunday morning. Not because she wants to look perfect, but because if she is walking around like she's in a hurry and rushing from thing to thing, then there's no ability for people to feel like they can approach her. Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. Yes.
No pretending.
No pretending.
Yeah.
No pretending.
You know, sometimes we just want to pretend that
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
we need to be kind.
Yeah. Yep. Because if we continue to pretend, we can't name the thing that's causing us to act that way and then turn our focus back to Him. Because it's not about, I'm having a bad day, so I'm going to stomp around the church building and be grumpy to every single person that I meet. Because sometimes it feels like we want to do that. You said I could be real. You said I could be authentic. So that just means I'm mad right now, so everyone else is going to know that I am mad. But in our desire to be authentic, it gives us an opportunity to have someone who loves us come up to us and say, what's going on? Okay, let's remember God in this situation. Let me pray with you and walk with you, cry with you, and then we can get back up and we can begin to serve from that place and not a place of anger and not a place of fakeness. It's being real. Yeah. Yes, Pastor Patrick.
When I think about authenticity, it's like, what was in God's mind when He made me?
Ooh. Wow.
When He made me, what was He thinking?
Wow.
What was He trying to accomplish?
Huh.
In me? Can I pray and hope I discover it? And if I know it, can I pray that He grants me grace to be that? Not everybody's going to fall in love with that.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to be happy seeing that
Mm-hmm.
who I am
Yes.
and who
Yeah.
He made me to be.
Mm-hmm.
And there's temptation sometimes to please everybody and maybe not to offend somebody, depending on where you are, where you're working, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And let me act this way, let me do this, let me avoid to say this, let me do that. I mean, but what is God? I mean, who's the real attribute that God had in mind when He made me?
Mm-hmm.
Lord, help me to be that. And once people, because everything God meant is beautiful,
Mm-hmm.
when people who love God and they see me, they will love me because I'm not fake. I'm being real. But then when people who don't love God, then I'm having problem with them because they won't make me a certain way. So I think, when I think about authenticity, I'm like, our prayer should be, can you bring me back to your intention?
I like that. I like that.
I think
Yes.
that's the way I wanted to say, like, it's a life that already been made, that we are just following the step of when you are in God, because He already made everything, because He said to Jeremiah, I know the plan that I have for you. So once we understand that, we work on that step. It's just what everybody say, walk, do the truth, and because that's what the life that you want us to have. As Patrick said, it's wanting the will of God, being people of a refuge of authentic. I think being in the thing that God already, you just letting Him, as you said, He leads you, He walk with you, because He knows. Because when He said that the thing that I gave to you among the blessing, there is persecution. He knows there will be a time we have to cry. He knows there will be a time that people of our family, they will reject us. He knows all those times. So He already traced it. He said that here, every step I will be with you because I'm the one who trusts. So I think that's the way, that's what I say.
Can I say one thing? Let me just give this example. I get married with Fraser, right? In my mind, I have favor.
Okay.
I created this image of the woman that she has to be, who I want her to be. And I have 3 years of the most miserable time of my life. And I'm thinking it's all her, that because she's not doing this, she's not doing that, and all this. And there's pressure. We even think about divorcing, like, how do you call it, Joseph and Mary quietly? Yeah, we thought about it, like just do it quietly, say goodbye to the church, have somebody else, and we walk. We don't hate one another, but let's just go. And in my mind, I'm thinking like she has to be like this. And by the grace of God, you know, I came to realize, no. There is a phaser that God made.
Well, that's cool.
You know what I mean? And let me discover that phaser. And leave that one. And when I begin to pray in that direction, I begin to see more beautiful things about her and less negative that I used to see.
Absolutely.
You see, and our life begin to become much better.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Can I just add?
Yep.
Thank you. You just gave me my sermon for next week. I love that question. What in the world was God thinking when He made it? That sounds like we're being critical. But what in the world was God thinking?
Yeah.
When He made it?
Yep.
How to do that?
Yeah. Patrick, you're
Preach it.
hitting on as you study theology, as you dive into studying the Word of God, one of the things that we, and I'm sure you've encountered this idea before, that we address is this idea of presuppositions. Those thoughts that come into our mind that may or may not be accurate, and the things that we interpret through the lens of our experience, right? So if I give you the word, we're from Idaho, so we love our mountains. This is a okay. So without even thinking, just right away off the top of your mind, if I say mountain, what do you think of? Tree. Okay. What else? Snow. What else?
Painful to go up there.
Painful. Okay. Animals. What else? What? Low oxygen. Okay. Breathing.
Quiet.
Okay. Quiet.
Beautiful.
Okay.
Let's go.
Bigfoot, I love it. Okay. Did anybody, and if you did, it's okay, but did anybody, when I said, when you think of a mountain, what do you think of? Think, oh, well, it's two land masses. When they join together and they shove up out of the ground, it creates a mountain. No. But that's the definition of mountain. You look mountain up in the dictionary, and that's what you're going to find. But instead, what we think of immediately is what we have experienced, what we know to be true, the images and the ideas that have formed our opinions about the world around us. And it's not bad. It's not a bad thing. I'm not saying you're all wrong. But we have to know and identify that we do that. So when we do the same thing for each other, and we do the same thing to God sometimes, who God really is, that His Word tells us that He is, yet we've come to our relationship with Him with all these ideas of what a father is or isn't, what a king is or isn't, and to correct that in our perception of Him and our perception of others. It's really powerful. Thank you. So we are to be authentic. People of refuge, as you'll see on number 2, are called to live honestly and lovingly. What do you think I mean by that? It's what?
Identity of our God.
The identity of our God. He is honest. He is loving. Yeah. It's good.
Well, my French is, as you know, not really good. I don't know French at all. But Christine filled me in what was being discussed here earlier. And I think what I heard was honesty. Honest concern on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
I could step in and say, well, whenever we have what looks like to be an argument, because if you go to like Acts 15, where the church comes together in this first council, and out of that comes this amazing message, we are saved by grace through faith alone. You don't have to become Jewish first. That changed the world.
Mm-hmm.
It literally is the reason you and I are sitting here today in Christ, because of that moment. But if you go back and you study the original language, those men came together and they were very honest. But the word there for discussion is literally means to argue. They had strong feelings about, no, you got to become a Jew first. No, you don't. And James finally stands up and says, well, it seems right and to the Spirit that we should say this. And they all agree. I was thinking about the verse that were in 1 Timothy, where Paul is talking to young Pastor Timothy, who is pastoring this church at Ephesus. And there's all kinds of wrangling going on, fighting. And he says, do not entertain an accusation against an elder unless there are 2 or 3 witnesses. Paul steps right in the middle of an argument. It says, number 1, don't entertain an accusation against an elder. Because why? Elders are going to get accusations. If you're a leader in the church, how many times has someone said something wrong about you that you know is not true? Then why? Why does it happen? Sometimes they're jealous. Sometimes they don't want you to have the leadership that you have. Sometimes they just don't like you. So what Paul says is that can happen. But if there are 2 or 3 witnesses, then you need to consider.
Yeah.
Because none of us, what are we listening to in the news today? All the stuff going on in Washington, D.C. Everybody's saying no one is above the law. Well, there is no person, man or woman, who is so important in the kingdom that sin in their life should not be confronted. Because if we've sinned and we've hurt someone, we need to repent.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So Paul is talking about this. He's not afraid to step into the middle of an argument. Why? Honest.
Mm-hmm.
Honest. If we treat each other kindly, we can't just do it. Just believe everything we say. 2 or 3 witnesses. Okay, you sin. You better back it up.
Mm-hmm.
Because and we've done that even in Crossroads. If someone says, well, so-and-so said this, and so where are the witnesses? Well, then be quiet. Maybe, is that a pretty general way? Yeah. And if it happens again, we invite them to leave the church.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's gospel. That's honest.
Yeah.
Honesty is not always just me being honest about myself. Honesty is about me and you calling each other to live truthfully.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that's hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's something God Steve usually share when we have our go to Jesus moment among the pastors. And he tells this proverb that always stay in my mind. He says, when men meet together and after they talk they get out, all their faces heavy, like everybody's like squeeze. That means they had a good talk. When they come in, they smiling, smiling, everybody has been fake. So when we're talking, there should not be no fakeness here. Talking about arguing, we're going to put this thing on the table. It's going to offend some people here, but we're going to deal with it. So when we come out, the truth is out, and then we feel good. And when we stand over there, we can give people the word of God.
Speak the truth in love.
Right. Right.
And it's always hard because I can compare me working with the team I have now like over 10 years and doing that practice. There's never been a church split, you know. Previously we had like, I told you the story, like in less than 3 years, 5 church split. Because there's no honesty. You know, people talking over there, but now with the same team more than 10 years, we have problems. We have misunderstanding. But we have developed this culture, like we're going to talk about it. We're going to put it on the table, and me, senior pastor, or you didn't know, put it on the table. What is bad? I put the question there. What am I doing is bothering you? Say it, and let's deal with it, and let's see what we can do with it. And then he helps a lot.
Yeah.
Whenever 2 or 3 gather, there
Yeah.
will be an argument.
Yeah. And that's operating from the mentality too that you aren't perfect, Pastor Patrick. Like, and that's the other thing. Being a person of refuge knows they're not perfect. And one of the first things that I say to people who are trying to decide whether or not they want to call Crossroads home is this philosophy has inundated who we are and the way in which we operate, but by heavens are we going to mess up. And you may not see this played out perfectly. But if we can name that and have grace for one another, then we don't give up so easily. Yeah.
But we also don't allow people to be hurtful
Right.
to other people with their,
Right.
with their words.
Right. Absolutely.
Because we and any one of us can say, so you're telling me this, do you know this because you experienced it, or did you hear it from someone else? Because if you heard it from someone else, that's gossip. Now, is this something you need to go and talk to that brother or sister about? Matthew 18.
Yep.
First of all, you go to the brother. If he doesn't listen, take a witness. If that doesn't work, tell it to the church. This is the one thing that Jesus says on how to resolve conflict in the church. And it's the last thing we do.
That's true.
And it's honesty.
Yeah.
A survey came out this week that human beings spend at least 51 minutes gossiping every day.
Interesting.
51 minutes gossiping. Either you are the one doing it or you are the one listening.
Interesting. So as so as people of refuge, as leaders of refuge, as pastors of refuge, our call is to walk in this openly, honestly, with ourselves and with others, to operate from that place of conviction and not just head knowledge of what people should do. And so, as this last thought, we are to be safe people for others because we have met with a God who is safe. And when we are safe, our churches are safe places for people to find Jesus. Now, when we say God is safe, we're not saying God is a pushover and he'll give me whatever I want. Because if he doesn't give me what I want, well, then that's not safe. No. What we mean by safe is that we are protected from the enemy, but we're also confronted with those things in us that create environments and temptations and lies that are not safe. So there are things about God that in human, worldly terms may feel very unsafe. But that's what we are to walk in and to be challenged by. And so we are going to, I left a chunk of time, and we're doing this on purpose because this is so key foundationally to everything else we're going to unpack from here on out. What we're going to talk about tomorrow with Transformation, Sunday with Partnership, that I felt like it was important that we take time to stop and process it personally. You are the one person in charge of your soul and caring for your soul. And so no one else can say this for you. We need to grapple with it ourselves. And so you'll see there a list of questions, a journal response there at the bottom of the page. These are a handful of questions to get you thinking, praying, journaling. So we are going to take about 20 minutes, which I know feels like a long time. And we're just going to take time alone. If you want to go sit in there, if you want to spread out a little bit, you can. And this is your time with the Lord to answer some of these questions and to pray. And then we'll come back and pray together before we hop into that 5,000-foot view. But we need to do this. I need to do this. Okay? So I'll call us back in about 20 minutes. And the questions are right there on the back and the bottom. So, yeah, about 2:10. Yep.
We are answering this question by ourselves, and then we are praying.
And then we'll come back to, so you can answer it, pray about it, and then we'll come back together and pray all together.